Greetings and welcome to укрлайф.тв. My name is Sergey Aushkin and I am glad to introduce you Jasminka Dzumhur, human rights ombudsperson from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Welcome.
Thank you for invitation. It's my pleasure and regards to all your followers.
So, we would be glad if you would share your experience, as we know that Bosnia and Herzegovina is one of the post-Yugoslavian countries, and those countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Albania and others were suffering a lot of problems which are now unfortunately common and for Ukrainians as well. And one of those problems is of course the problem of IDPs. This is the short for internally displaced persons, or to be more simple, I guess, the refugees, people who had to flee from their homes, from their places, saving their lives, their families from bombardments and other terrors from the war. So we would like to know what was it like in your country? How did you faced those problems? What problems in the process of overcoming them have you encountered?
First of all, it's very important to say that Bosnia and Herzegovina in some way suffering twice. First was dissolution of former Yugoslavia and the 6 former republics of Yugoslavia decided to take on independence in different stages, and I don't like to explain how it was, but problem was that there wasn't a full agreement of all 6 republics for peaceful dissolution of former Yugoslavia, and therefore war starting few days in Slovenia, but for a very short period was solved. But in 1992, serious war started in Croatia and continued in 1992 in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It means that this dissolution of former Yugoslavia is a federal state. Consequences to many issues and to many rights of citizens, because some of those rights were organized on federal level, some of them were organized on state level in each of those 6 republics. It was something as it was Soviet Union, and but when you starting dissolution process through war, it is normally that you can't maintain this process. Especially
when the national contradictions were sharpened inside.
Ethnic issue was raised as a key issue on beginning, and I would like really emphasize that question, that during of conflict in Croatia, there was created independent areas, Serb independent areas, under of internationally recognized state of Croatia. And they established own organs, and they are trying to create own independency. There wasn't support of international community for that. To have a new established state, there must be filled 3 conditions. It's not enough that you have only territory and citizens. Third element of each state is to have government, sovereign government, and internationally recognized government. And the similar process was continued in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Majority Serb population in Bosnia and Herzegovina established own autonomy region, as you have in your country. They announced that independence, Republika Srpska as Serb autonomy region, and they didn't recognize Bosnia and Herzegovina, which at that time already was recognized as an independent state. Immediately there is problem with whom you can negotiate, particularly if you have conflict that is not frozen conflict. It was active conflict where more than 1,100 people were killed. when more than 1 million people were moved from home. And on which parameters we are speaking, I can say that population of Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1992, it was census was 4.5 millions. Till 2014, we didn't have census, and population in 2014, census says, is 3.5 million.
So
what
almost
means
1 million people.
We lost almost 1 million during a period a little bit more than 2 decades. And when you speak with people who are experts in statistics, it is regularly for 1 decade when a regular statistic census state maintains, you have increasement of population for 10%, what means that we lost 500,000 based on that there wasn't increasement of population, and also we lost through displacement 1 million.
And of course damage to the infrastructure and economics.
Everything was definitely destroyed, and economic, and you know, there wasn't only conflict. Parallel with that, we had economic reform, economic transition from state property. You know how it's going was everything is ownership of people, and that privatization process. In some way, we were a state under of all transitions which you can have in one state. And now to return on your question, under of that circumstances, state authorities were obliged to deal with a very big number of IDPs. As you said, we need to make distinction between refugees and IDPs. Refugees are people who went abroad, out of border of country because of war, conflict, and other circumstances.
And they reside in the other country.
Yeah, with the possibility to return. IDPs are people who return, who received, who leave their homes because of the same circumstances as refugees went from country, but they stayed in country territory. And both categories, refugees and IDPs, should have the same rights. First of all, they must be provided with right to return to home. And when we are speaking on reparation processes as part of a return process, it means that they must be returned in rights which they enjoyed before conflict. It's not always possible, and example in Bosnia and Herzegovina, authorities will tell you that they are so approved because of return process of property. It is true, there is no doubt, but many of those houses which were returned to owners were destroyed.
So what you will return?
Exactly, but you return them in that what they have registered in property registered books. It's very important to follow that. Although during of war, many registered books of property were damaged or disappeared, not only because of conflict, but intentionally, that there is no evidences on property, etc. That process, return process, although one annex of Dayton Peace Agreement, which stopped war, regulated the issue of IDPs and their rights, didn't provide a real return process, because process of return property wasn't followed by ensuring of other rights. And here today in Ukraine, we discussed the issue on right of pensions for persons which are living on temporarily occupied territories. It is one of rights which was also crucial for Bosnia and Herzegovina citizens. Some of them decided to return, but after that there was a problem, because social rights in according to Dayton Peace Agreement are defined on entity levels. To entities maintain their own systems with very low level of harmonization. That harmonization process was in place, example, in first 5-7 years after conflict, but later they are really created very, very independent systems without coordination. What brings us an issue that many people in Bosnia and Herzegovina don't enjoy the equal rights, depends of that where they are living. And now there is question, is it discrimination, although there is no discriminatory factor which must be on subjectivity differences. Now we have objective differences, different part of state where persons are living. Those things created tensions, and under such circumstances it is very difficult to ensure reconciliation process. Example, it is the same system with education, and OSCE in Bosnia Herzegovina was responsible for human rights and particularly for education, and during that process to ensure return people to previous living places, they promote an example model of 2 schools under 1 roof. What does it mean? As I said, conflict was first it is issue of aggression, which is very, very polarized issue in context of former Yugoslavia. But former Yugoslavia had power over military forces. What means that if military forces made attack, it was really attack on state. But the second question when we are speaking is that division among ethnicity. And when OSCE promoted this way to return people, they said, okay, as far as it's important to bring kids to previous living places, and they can go in the same school, but not in the same classroom, under 1 roof, and there was 2 schools, depends of that of which ethnicity are pupil.
But that's model, like a discrimination.
Yeah, exactly. But it was OSCE had intention to promote that as transition model, and such model still exists in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Many UN, yes, we have in many places. Example in Čapljina, Seljak. Now it's a very known name. That kids. Depends of ethnicity. They are going in the same school under 1 roof, but schools are total divided. You have Croats and Bosniaks, and teachers are the same ethnicity as kids. They are going in different shifts in school. They don't meet each other. And UN committees warn BH authorities that is exactly segregation in school system, and it is serious violation.
And of course it increases some tensions between pupils of the same school, like you mean, and there can be conflicts. So
learn young population what is the most danger. You learn young population that they cannot live with others, that you can't go in the same school, in the same classroom, although their parents went in that school together. And it is very negative message for future, for new generations. And I took this education issue as example, but similar situation with social rights, that IDPs, if decided to return from one entity to other, they had problems because of limits in law which says that achieved rights, social rights, cannot be transferred, and if person will change the residency of entity, cannot keep that rights and so on. And therefore many IDPs only submitted request to return property. They return property, but they stay to live in places where they were during of conflict. And what means that it gives not exact data related to IDPs, and if you have that period 22 years after war was stopped in Bosnia and Herzegovina, now there are new generations and so on. Definitely I think that many negative things other countries can learn from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I always sending message, don't repeat our mistakes.
And how do you think, do Ukraine repeat some of that mistakes right now as you are monitoring our situation?
This morning I said that I really have mixed feelings when I'm in Ukraine, because that values which Ukrainian society has were also values of my society, very polite, very warm people, very open people, and everything is easy, communication and so on. But at the same time, they are passing such a situation which my country passed, and I'm so sad because of that. And today my message related to a reform of pension was clear. You must respect all citizens and all people who contributed to pension fund, and they must be ensured with the enjoyment of that rights, because it is principle promoted in all international standards which Ukraine as a state party of many international documents accepted. It is from a human rights perspective, but also from a policy level, jurisdiction of state you can show through different ways. One of those ways is that you ensure rights for all your citizens. And if you offer people in a temporarily occupied territory possibility to register for their rights, including rights for pension, it is a way that you confirm your jurisdiction over that territory, and you offer that people something, and it's very important.
And that you recognize them as your people.
As your people, and that who are living on your territory, and it is way how you really confirm jurisdiction, or your own jurisdiction, and it is a policy level decision which must take in consideration that fact. The easiest way is, I don't care on that people, it means that you don't care on that territory, and how you can plan peaceful reintegration of that territory if you don't respect needs of that people. We had such situation, example in Serbia versus Kosovo, and people didn't, they were under one system, and but people from Kosovo in one moment didn't have possibility to enjoy rights and so on. And on the end, if you are not able to provide me with my rights, how do you think that I will respect your jurisdiction and so on? It is very important, first of all, human rights perspective, because it is perspective of each human being. Second is a policy perspective. And on the end, third issue, if people will not enjoy rights which are entitled, they will go to court. It will make court system very busy. And on the end, people will win through this court process, including European court. And in that case, government will not only pay pensions, which they didn't pay earlier. They will, on top of that, they will pay different compensations, fees, etc. And therefore, why create negative image of state in such circumstances? I know that it's not easy to provide rights to people who didn't recognize state and jurisdiction of state. But you must also be aware that what we learned from former Yugoslavia, including not only Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, all of them signed on the end agreements, bilateral agreements on a pension system. They provided their own citizens with rights, but also they provided a right of pension for people who are not more on their territory. This morning I gave figure that, example, Serbia paying around 50,000 pensions for people who are living today in Croatia, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Macedonia, Montenegro. It is the same situation with Croatia, with Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it's not easy to pay pension to somebody who was war criminal.
Yes. But when you recognize the occupation forces as criminals, then how do you know that you are not like sponsoring your enemies? Because there is war going on, and when will you try to pay pensions? Maybe you are sponsoring the enemy troops, they're gaining new forces, and that's why some, well, not so seldom opinions why we should pay our money of our taxpayers to people on that territories which are under the occupation of our enemy. So that's why we are like digging our own graves with that.
Yeah, but definitely pension is property right. You are paying that because of fact that that person contributed to pension fund before. And when that person entered to pension fund, automatically there is a double side obligation. One side is that that person paying contribution, and other side is to provide pension for that person when will fill it conditions. There is no doubt, it is a two-side agreement and it must be respected. We can't go further in debate on that, who is that person. As I said, in situation of former Yugoslavia, some pensioners were war criminals, judgments from Hague Tribunal, but they paid contributions to pension. Some of them still working against Bosnia Herzegovina, politically, publicly, and so on. But
even inside the country.
Inside and out abroad, because they have right to enjoy their pensions in way. Some of them living in other countries. As I said, there are now bilateral agreements and so on. And but it's very important to clear that if person submit a request for registration, it recognizes jurisdiction of state, and you must offer that person with choice, and maybe they will not accept that choice to recognize jurisdiction of state. It is way how things going, and also if they are receiving pension from other funds. We had that situation in former Yugoslavia, that some of people applied for pension and social benefits in not only in 2 countries, in all those countries where they worked in previous period, and after that they were obliged to return and so on. Manipulations are always a serious issue. And therefore, it's very important that not only legislation, but also implementation acts as rule books, which ministry should adopt it, must prevent such situations and etc. And on the end, to be honest, we don't speak on big amount of money on personal base. In total, for state, it's big amount of money. But when we are speaking from personal perspective, we know how it's very low pensions, and you can't fund animals in such way. It's not such big amount of money.
And you're saying about the manipulation with pensions, and that the state needs to somehow regulate this issue. And we in Ukraine have such practice that IDPs on our controlled territories are being monitored by our police, internal affairs organs, and that they force IDPs to stay at their home while awaiting for some kind of inspection to create evidence that they are leaving when they are staying. And how do you think, is it a normal practice for authority, or maybe they are going a little bit too far?
It's a very strange system to connect the right to pension with other status of citizens, particularly with status of IDPs. Because we are speaking on 2 very vulnerable groups. One, pensioners, because many of them are very old people, and now we are returning on that question to fund animals, people over 65, 67, 80, 90 to be animals and so on. They are not able to take guns. And on the other side, you have IDPs. Among them, you have different categories, children, women, but also pensioners. I can't see reason for connection between those 2 categories, because base for enjoyment of their rights are totally different. Pension rights are related to contribution funds, related to previous work status, and there is independent system for creation of that right. And you can't connect that right with fact, is it somebody IDP or not. Now we are coming in situation that we are making a discrimination among different groups of IDPs. You control only pensioners, but how do you control kids or female or persons with disabilities, all of them can enjoy the right to make choice of living place, but only pensioners are putting in additional control. It is really discrimination against age, and because pensioners are mostly old people, etc. And definitely there should be totally separated. Pension system is one system, IDP is other system, and there is no connection. Maybe this option only created situation that all statistics which is present related to IDPs is not a real statistic, because you are keeping people in some temporary living places only because of pension. Maybe some of them don't have intention to be more IDPs, but they are there in that category because of condition to enjoy right to pension.
Okay, so what can you tell us, how about to ease the internal tension between people living on the controlled territories like the big Ukraine, and what about those people who are coming from the occupied territories to free territories, and they're being discriminated by the fact that they were from Donbas region? And it is not uncommon that some people from that regions were violated by many employees, that they do not let them to apply to jobs, often refused in the leasing the houses or renting houses. And was it common for your experience in Bosnia and Herzegovina that some people inside the one countries were hated so much, and I'd better say not hated, didn't understand that? Yeah,
I fully understand. We had such tensions, particularly during period 1993-1994, because at that time was the most critical period of war. There wasn't enough food for people. Many areas were totally blocked, including capital Sarajevo, and any food wasn't possible to bring to Sarajevo because of occupation. Sarajevo is in center of hills and mountains, and if you have such position, and if you have heavy guns on top of those hills and mountains, and it's in that you are on daily basis on disposal for soldiers, you can imagine, without water, without electricity, etc. And many areas in Bosnia and Herzegovina were organized in such way. At the same time, those free areas, we are called free areas, we are obliged to accept a big number of IDPs. In one town, it was a situation that bigger population was IDPs than its regular population of inhabitants. And tensions are because of the fact that humanitarian aid, many international organizations, including UNHCR and others, dominantly were present to feed IDPs, because they are critical mass of people. They went from their home without having own property, etc.
More vulnerable category.
Yes, but at the same time, regular inhabitants in those areas which accepted the IDPs were in the same situation, because food is a crucial element of surviving, and publicly there were statements, again food for IDPs, why we are here, and so on. Depends of local communities. Some local communities were organized very well. Example, I was in Zenica city. It's 70 kilometers town far from Sarajevo, and local administration organized distribution of food through a card system, and each citizen, including IDP, was entitled to receive the same amount of different products. And on top of that, there was public kitchens for IDPs in collective centers and so on. It was period of tensions, and also we should be aware that issue of period of time, it's also a question, because you can accept some things 1 month, 2 months, 3 months.
You can't just say be nice to each other.
When it goes years, and when you don't see light on the end of tunnel, it is normally that frustrations increasing, non-tolerance, and etc. And my message to citizens of Ukraine, always when you want to do something towards other person, think on that, is it correct, and try to put yourself in skin of that person.
Well, and I guess the most valuable factor of bettering the situation was the end of the war.
Yeah. We like Dayton Peace Agreement only because of one fact, that war was stopped and killing was stopped. But everything what was created by Dayton Peace Agreement, from this perspective, after 22 years, I can responsible say did create a basic base for a modern democratic country. Although if you read Dayton Peace Agreement, it gives guarantee for enjoyment of internationally recognized standards, etc. But structure which was created by Dayton Peace Agreement does not provide that guarantee. Division of rights among different level of government structure, it's a really serious issue, particularly when we are speaking on social rights, health rights, etc. And second, Republika Srpska, as in the self-announced autonomous territory, through Dayton Peace Agreement was recognized. And it will not be a problem if there is intention to unify all that things under one roof of one state. But that recognition of Republika Srpska creates now still tensions that they are trying to get more autonomy. They are so often threatened by different referendums, including a referendum on separation of Republika Srpska from Bosnia Herzegovina as independent, internationally recognized state. And when you have such rhetoric publicly from public authorities, it creates frustration on the end for new generations. New generations want to continue normal life as a modern Europe country. They want to enjoy European Union, but we are still living with many issues from past, and therefore it's very important to solve all transitional justice issues, including solutions for IDPs, including rights to social security, and that equality treatment of all citizens without taking consideration their status.
So I guess Ukraine will be waiting for that kind of problems, even, well, maybe it will be tens or thousands, no, hundreds years even, maybe, I don't know, years after the war, it will be still remembered. And of course there will be some rhetorics trying to reborn such tendencies of separatism. So it's interesting, how does your government facilitate such tendencies? Like, are such separatistic rhetorics are outlawed in your country?
Although there is criminal acts related to hate speech and such rhetoric, there is no any prosecution against people who are using that way to promote some ideas on separation. Fact that we don't have unified policy in the state resulted in the fact that we have so many non-solved issues. As I mentioned, 2 schools under one roof. Other issue is Sejdic-Finci decision of European Court. It's first decision adopted by European Court on discrimination based on Protocol 12 now it's a very known decision. It is not yet implemented, and that decision says that Jewish and Roma people in Bosnia and Herzegovina are not able to candidate themselves for position of presidency. There are also additional 2 European Court decisions against Bosnia and Herzegovina related to election issues. Bosniaks and Croats, which have residency on territory of Republika Srpska, cannot be nominated to presidency and House of People. It is the same situation with Serbs on territory of Federation. What means that Dayton Peace Agreement provided collectivity rights to 3 major ethnic groups, Croats, Serbs and Bosniaks. And any person who does not declare herself or himself under of 3 constituted people has problem to enjoy rights, because primary privilege status has representatives of 3 constituted people. And if you have discriminatory provision in your constitution, in Dayton Peace Agreement, Annex 4 is Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, you can imagine how many problems are present in the field. I mentioned social benefits, education benefits, and the results of that we have now intention and living of young people. They are decided to leave Bosnia and Herzegovina. They don't see perspective, and we are becoming a really state of old people. I know that this scenario is not a scenario for Ukraine, and I don't like to have that scenario for your country, because...
But tendencies are already here.
But your country is a big country comparing with Bosnia and Herzegovina. But definitely, if there is no vision, if there is no
vision of future,
normally, particularly young people trying to find solution for themselves.
And for the last question, maybe it's like a bit general, but why do we need to care about human rights even during the wartime?
Because each state party, through enjoyment of international standards, accepted, and that what is prescribed in international standards is minimum. It's not something what was imposed to state party. It is something what state voluntarily accepted. And during of wartime, those rights are really should be respected. There is a few exceptions, and definitely there is no doubt that it is way how state really shows that it's a democratic state.
Maybe it provides with the national unity. And I guess the wartime somehow consolidated your people, made them realize that they're Bosniaks, or even like something more, not just by their ethnicity, but their allegiance to their state, their home country.
Yeah, but I think that soldiers and participants in military operations are first recognized that they are only tools in hands of political leaders, because they didn't receive, first of all, they don't have safety state. Their kids now don't have job. Their kids trying to find solution abroad. And some of them don't have pensions because they didn't fill conditions from loan pensions, and they are in middle age, they lost jobs, and on the end they are losers. They are losers, and in war there is no winner. To be honest, I didn't see any winner from the war. If you have destroyed country, if you have destroyed economy, if you have reduced population through killing, how you can say that you are a winner?
Well, thank you for your inspirational speech. I hope that our country, your country, will overcome any troubles and well, our experience will be the world experience to all other countries of the world.
Thank you, and I also wish in future that we speak on our culture, that we speak on exchange programs for our youth people, and there are so many other positive activities. It is better to speak on that than on war and consequences of war.
So I hope the next time we will try to make cultural exchange. Thank you very much. Jasminka Dzumhur, human rights ombudsperson from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and stay on the укрлайф. Thank you.
Нет, ну, во-первых, это выгода.